It's always wonderful when we can say and even mean it that the reason we work is for the pure satisfaction of doing something we love. The saying goes, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. We may indeed love our jobs, but somewhere along the line we have to be paid or else our vocation becomes just a hobby. Pay is one of the most important issues handled by human resources. It's very expensive and quite likely a company's payroll is its highest expense. On the flip side, though, pay is also the incentive to attract the best people to your organization. In setting a pay structure policy, a company will take a look at a variety of issues. The level of responsibility associated with a job will be a major consideration. Now, the boss tends to make more than the line level workers because it's the boss who has to lead and inspire and who has to make the big decision about business operations that can result in the firm succeeding or failing. Now, with the big responsibility also comes big risk, especially if the boss has invested his or her own money to start the operation and keep it going. The average salary or wage paid for individual jobs depend on the importance of those jobs ranked against all of the other positions in the organization. Some jobs are so essential that the company couldn't function long without someone in that spot who has specially developed skills and abilities that very few others have. On the other hand, there are jobs that can be filled quite readily from an easily accessible pool of available workers. Pay structures are based on a number of factors. These can include the organization's goals and how a particular job fits in with meeting those goals. Take Major League Professional Sports, for instance. The goal is to win the championship. The Super Bowl in football, the World Series in baseball, the NBA championship, or the Stanley Cup in hockey. Each individual team is its own company with an entire staff of employees. There are coaches, marketing specialists, salespersons, accountants, and so on right through the desk receptionists in the team office. Now, these are all valuable positions, but the true business end of the profession is carried out by the players. You don't see too many team accountants scoring touchdowns, runs, baskets, or goals, and that's why the players are paid so much. Now, granted, pro sports may be a whole different economy, but it's in that world the idea is the same. Those who directly play the biggest roles in getting the company business done get the most money. In addition, there's marketing data available to human resources in determining what specific jobs pay in particular industries and even regions. Pay can also be based on legal requirements and principles of fairness. Now, it's much more complicated nowadays to set pay rates. Wasn't that long ago that a pay rate was the result of a direct agreement between the boss and the worker. Oh, maybe there was a lot of dickering, but the process was still quite simple. Now there are a number of government-created considerations that come into play. There's the standard of equal employment opportunity, with equal pay for equal work, and employers must disregard age, race, sex, and protected status classifications. Pay differences must relate to employee qualifications or prevailing pay levels in the market. Employers must also comply with the U.S. Fair Labor Standards Act. The Act upholds minimum wage levels, although individual states could have higher rates. Overtime work requires paying employees time and a half the regular pay rate beyond 40 hours a week. The Act also exempts managers, professionals, and outside salespersons from the time and a half rule. Furthermore, employers must comply with child labor laws, and federal contractors must pay at least the prevailing wage of the geographical area. Economic influences also figure heavily into setting pay structures. Now, there may be limitations where employers have to keep their salary and wage expenses within profitable levels, and that means the employer will have to set an upper limit on how much the company can afford to offer an employee. Now, the labor market itself may be a dictating force in setting pay as well. Workers, of course, want to earn all they can, and the employer must generally pay at least the going rate in the market. Now, these are not necessarily hard and fast rules, though. A company could choose to pay its workers above the market rate. The downside to that is that the extra cost is passed on to the customers, who may not be willing to pay the higher prices for the goods or services that go along with offering those more generous salaries. On the upside, higher pay rates usually attract higher quality workers who are more highly productive. Attracting the best workers can actually be an advantage that the company can use to justify its higher prices. Paying below market rate can also have both advantages and drawbacks. Lower wages and salaries can mean a competitive advantage in being able to sell goods and services at lower prices. Then again, lower pay makes it more difficult to attract and retain the top qualified workers. Employees themselves or job recruits also have an influence on pay structures. Now, this depends on how highly employees or employee groups value themselves and their ability to provide the company's product. Employees may determine some of their own value, the amount of money for which they'd work, based on their own education, training, experience, and the amount of effort they put into doing quality work. And for as much as companies may try to keep individual pay rates secret, employees do have ways of finding out and comparing themselves with others. Workers may reach their own conclusions about fairness in their own minds, and if workers see their pay as being unfairly low, they may engage in behaviors to create a perceived fair situation. Job site behaviors and use or misuse of company resources may come into play. Evaluations help set a job's worth. Human resources staff or managers working in a human resources role will identify the different factors. Now, these might include assigning points to certain jobs, researching market pay levels for positions, comparing rates, combining jobs into groups and giving the groups pay grades, and establishing pay ranges for each grade. All of this also must take into account differences in working conditions and labor markets in designing the pay structure. There are also alternatives to job-based pay. Job structures can be reduced to create more pay flexibility. Jobs can also be categorized by bands of jobs, leading to create pay ranges for each band. Employees can also be rewarded for their knowledge and skills. Now, this approach encourages employees to be more flexible in how they approach their jobs and to continue learning. Employees are also encouraged to adapt new technology. Remember, pay structure is just a plan. It later falls on human resources to compare the pay structure with actual pay. Sometimes, jobs just don't pay as much as they should, or conversely, they may pay far more than the market would seem to dictate. Now, when this occurs, human resources will have to work with managers to decide whether to adjust pay structures and by how much. Well, so far we've considered employee pay schedules. We're also seeing a couple of new and well-publicized circumstances starting to arise in discussions of employee compensation. One is paying employees during periods of military service, and the other is executive pay. It used to be a serious worry that when someone was called upon to perform military service, that his or her job could be lost and filled by that other worker who fills in. Now, to combat this, the government has now adopted the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. This requires employers to make jobs available to returning service members for at least 5 years. Many companies choose to help their employees who happen to be serving in the armed forces by paying the differences in their military pay with the amount they would have earned while on the job. Another hotly debated subject in recent years has been executive pay. High-ranking corporate positions, such as the chief executive officer and other top-level managers, can be paid salary levels many times, maybe even hundreds of times more than the pay earned by regular line employees. The argument does go that the CEO has a major impact on the performance of the organization, and that it's the CEO who sets the organization's culture, which then affects all employees. Then again, workers can become embittered when they see themselves or other fellow employees lose their jobs or take pay cuts when economic times get rough, but that the company executive salaries don't seem to take a hit when profits are down or the stock price is falling. Executive pay and what employees know about how company executives are paid can be of critical importance for human resources to handle properly. This can, after all, have a great effect on employee morale and how well those workers continue to perform. In this unit, we've considered pretty much just straight employee payment and why it is what it is. Well, next we'll take up recognizing employee contributions with pay.